joke that shook the NBA Finals. Nobody expected the biggest story of the NBA Finals to have nothing to do with a game-winning shot. Not a buzzer beater, not a superstar meltdown, not even a controversial referee decision. Instead, it all started with one joke, one sentence, one Hall of Famer who has built an entire second career by saying exactly what everyone else is too afraid to say. And this time, that sentence may have pushed the limits further than ever before. Because when Charles Barkley looked into the camera during the 2026 NBA Finals and cracked a joke about Cardi B, millions of viewers laughed. Millions of others didn't. Within minutes, social media exploded. Fans clipped the moment, sports pages reposted it, entertainment blogs jumped on it. People who hadn't watched a single second of the finals suddenly had an opinion about Charles Barkley. Then something even crazier happened. The next morning, instead of apologizing, instead of explaining himself, instead of saying he had gone too far, Charles Barkley doubled down. He went on national radio and openly admitted something that shocked the sports world. He hoped ESPN would fire him. Not, I hope this blows over, not, I regret what happened. He literally said he wanted to get fired. Why? Because according to Barkley himself, it might be the greatest retirement plan ever created. To understand how one joke turned into a national headline, we have to go back to Game 3 of the 2026 NBA Finals. Madison Square Garden. The New York Knicks battling the San Antonio Spurs. The atmosphere was electric. Celebrities packed courtside seats. The basketball world was watching. Cardi B took center stage as the halftime performer. Cameras followed everything. The performance. The crowd reactions. The celebrity appearances. And then Charles Barkley did what Charles Barkley has done for decades. He stopped being predictable. He delivered a joke that immediately sent the entire internet into chaos. Shaquille O'Neal laughed. Kenny Smith laughed. The crew moved on, but the internet didn't. The clip spread like wildfire. Suddenly, Charles Barkley and Cardi B were trending at the exact same time. Fans split into two camps almost instantly. One side argued this was classic Chuck. Unfiltered. Fearless. The reason Inside the NBA became the greatest sports studio show ever created. The other side believed the joke crossed a line that national television shouldn't cross. By the end of the night, the finals had become secondary. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Had Charles Barkley finally gone too far? And if he had, would ESPN actually do something about it? Because what Barkley would say next would transform a viral joke into one of the most unbelievable business stories the NBA world has seen in years. Before we get there, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your country, city, or state in the comments below. And here's tonight's question. If you think Barkley's joke was simply classic comedy and people are overreacting, comment the number 1. If you think he crossed the line and ESPN should have stepped in, comment the number 2. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications because the truth behind why Charles Barkley practically begged to be fired is even crazier than the joke itself. The clip that went nuclear, by the time the third quarter started, the joke was no longer just a joke. It had become content. And in the modern NBA, content moves faster than the game itself. One person clipped it, then another account reposted it. Then a bigger sports page added a caption. Then entertainment pages grabbed it because Cardi B's name was attached. Then NBA fans started arguing in comment sections before most people even understood what had happened. That is how fast the story escaped the building. Madison Square Garden was still roaring. The Knicks and Spurs were still fighting for a finals win. Coaches were still drawing up adjustments. Players were still trying to survive the pressure of the biggest stage in basketball. But online, the conversation had already shifted. It was no longer about matchups. It was no longer about rotations. It was no longer about who controlled the paint or who won the third quarter. It was about Charles Barkley. And that is when the story became dangerous for ESPN. Because Barkley is not a normal analyst. He is not someone viewers expect to follow every corporate sentence perfectly. He is the guy fans tune in for because he does not sound like everyone else. That is the entire business model of Charles Barkley. He says the uncomfortable thing. He makes the room laugh. He makes the room tense. He creates the kind of unscripted television that networks spend millions trying to manufacture. But this time, the same thing that made him valuable also made him risky. The internet split immediately. Some fans said, "This is why we love Chuck." They argued that Inside the NBA has always been built on jokes, roasting, and live reactions. They said Barkley was just being Barkley and that people were trying too hard to turn every joke into a scandal. But another group saw it completely differently. They said national television is not a locker room. They said a performer on a major stage should not become the target of a personal joke while millions are watching. They said Barkley may be funny, but even funny people need boundaries. And that was the real tension, not whether people laughed. People definitely laughed. The question was whether laughter made it acceptable. That debate kept the clip alive. Every repost created another argument. Every argument created another wave of views. And every wave of views pushed ESPN closer to the center of the storm. Because now fans were not just asking what Barkley said, they were asking what the network would do about it. Would ESPN issue a statement? Would someone behind the scenes call Barkley? Would the show address it? Would Shaq or Kenny make another joke about it? Would Cardi B respond directly? For hours, nothing official happened. No suspension, no apology, no public discipline, just silence. And in that silence, the internet did what it always does. It filled the space with theories. Some people believed Barkley was too powerful to touch. Some believed ESPN would quietly warn him behind closed doors. Some believed the whole thing would disappear by the next game. But they were all wrong about one thing. The story was not about to disappear, because Charles Barkley himself was about to pour gasoline on it. And when he sat down with Dan Patrick the next morning, he did not sound like a man trying to save his job. He sounded like a man daring someone to take it from him. Barkley's shocking response: the next morning, Charles Barkley had a chance to calm everything down. He could have said the joke was harmless. He could have apologized. He could have given the safe television answer. But Chuck did the opposite. When Dan Patrick asked if management ever tells him he cannot say things like that, Barkley dropped a line that changed everything. He said he hoped they would fire him. Not because he was angry, not because he was scared, because he knew the contract math. Barkley explained that he still had 6 or 7 years left on his deal and admitted there was basically no chance he would work all of them. Then he made the real point clear. If they fired him, he believed they would still have to pay him. That turned the controversy into something bigger than a viral joke. Now it was a power play. Barkley was not acting like a man afraid of ESPN. He was acting like a man who knew ESPN had very limited options. The interview spread fast because fans realized this was not just about Cardi B anymore. This was about money, leverage, ego, and one of the most fearless voices in NBA media daring a giant network to make the first move. And the wildest part? Chuck sounded completely relaxed. Like he had already done the math, like he already knew the answer. ESPN could be upset, fans could argue, the internet could explode. But Barkley was sitting behind a contract so massive that being fired might actually be his dream ending. The $210 million safety net, the reason Barkley felt untouchable came down to one number: $210 million. That was the massive contract extension he signed with TNT and Warner Brothers Discovery in 2022. 10 years, around $21 million per year. For most people, getting fired is a nightmare. For Barkley, it could become a paid vacation. If the remaining years of his deal are guaranteed, firing him without a strong legal reason could mean paying him anyway. That is why his "fire me" comment hit so hard. It was funny on the surface, but underneath, it was business. Barkley was basically saying, if you want me gone, you may have to pay me to leave. That puts ESPN in an impossible spot. If they ignore the controversy, critics say Barkley gets special treatment. If they punish him too hard, fans accuse ESPN of killing the exact personality that made Inside the NBA valuable. And if they actually fire him, they may hand him the outcome he publicly said he wanted. That is why this story is not just about a joke. It is about leverage. Barkley has the fame, he has the ratings, he has the contract, and most importantly, he has nothing to fear. That is what makes him dangerous on live television. Because when a man knows the network needs him more than he needs the job, he does not speak like an employee. He speaks like Charles Barkley, the ESPN TNT mystery. But the money is only half the story. The other half is even stranger. Because Charles Barkley may be appearing on ESPN, but that does not mean ESPN controls him the way most fans think. For more than 2 decades, Barkley was a TNT man. Inside the NBA was his kingdom. Ernie Johnson kept the show steady, Kenny Smith brought the player perspective, Shaq brought the superstar energy, and Barkley brought the chaos. That chaos became the product. Fans did not watch because the show was polished. They watched because it felt real. Someone could laugh too hard. Someone could get roasted. Someone could say the one thing everyone else avoided. Then TNT lost its NBA package, and suddenly fans thought the greatest studio show in basketball might disappear. But instead of ending it, ESPN and TNT created a strange new arrangement. Inside, the NBA would survive, the crew would stay together, the show would still carry that TNT personality, but it would now air on ESPN and ABC. That is where things get calm. Barkley is on ESPN airwaves, but he is not simply a normal ESPN employee sitting under normal ESPN control. The show is a licensed product. ESPN gets the magic, but the magic comes from TNT's culture. And Barkley knows that. ESPN wanted the authenticity, the loose jokes, the unpredictable chemistry, the feeling that anything could happen on live television. But you cannot buy Charles Barkley's honesty and then act shocked when he says something uncomfortable. That is the bargain. Barkley spent years criticizing ESPN's corporate style. Now he is suddenly one of the biggest faces on its NBA coverage, while still carrying the attitude of a TNT legend. So when controversy hits, the question becomes messy. Is this ESPN's problem? Is this TNT's problem? Or is this simply the cost of doing business with Chuck? That uncertainty gives Barkley even more power. He has the contract. He has the audience. He has the history. And he knows the entire show loses something if executives try to turn him into a safe, scripted analyst. That is why his "fire me" line hits different. It is not just a joke. It is a reminder that ESPN may have the platform, but Barkley still controls the personality that makes people watch. Chuck versus everyone. To understand why Barkley did not panic, you have to understand his entire career. Charles Barkley has never been the type to back down. As a player, he battled bigger men every night. Bill Laimbeer, Charles Oakley, Karl Malone, Shaq Barkley built his reputation by standing in front of giants and refusing to move. That same attitude followed him into television. Inside the NBA did not make Barkley controversial. It gave his controversy a microphone. He has called out players, coaches, executives, and even his own network bosses. Sometimes he is funny. Sometimes he is harsh. Sometimes he is wrong. But he is almost never boring. That is why fans keep watching. The Cardi B joke was not some strange break from character. It was part of the same pattern that has followed Barkley for decades. He says what he thinks, then he deals with the reaction. And if people come after him, he usually hits back harder. That is why the "fire me" line felt so natural coming from him. Another analyst might sound reckless saying it. Barkley sounded like Barkley. The NBA world has always been full of carefully managed voices. Players protect brands, networks protect sponsors, analysts protect jobs. Chuck protects one thing, his freedom to speak, and that freedom is exactly what makes him valuable and dangerous at the same time. For the NBA Legends effect. After the clip went viral, the reaction was not quiet. Fans flooded social media with jokes, arguments, and hot takes. Some called it classic Chuck. Others said he had crossed the line. But the most important reaction came from the people around him. Shaq laughed. Kenny laughed. The desk did not freeze. Nobody immediately tried to clean up the moment. That told viewers something important about Inside the NBA. This is not a show built on perfect corporate control. It is built on chemistry, timing, and trust. Still, the criticism was real. Some viewers felt the joke was outdated. Some believed a national broadcast should not make personal jokes about a halftime performer. Others argued that Barkley gets away with things younger broadcasters never could. And that is where the debate became bigger than one joke. It became a conversation about what fans actually want from sports television. Do they want safe analysis? Or do they want real personalities? Because Barkley represents both the best and worst of unfiltered TV, he can be hilarious. He can be brutally honest. He can also create moments that make the network uncomfortable. But that discomfort is part of why people tune in. The truth is simple. Barkley did not become famous by being careful. He became famous because people never knew what he would say next. Why ESPN can't touch him. Here is the part ESPN understands better than anyone. Charles Barkley is not just an analyst. He is a ratings weapon. For years, ESPN had the NBA games, the finals platform, the biggest stars, and the most powerful sports network brand in America. But one thing always felt missing. A studio show fans truly love. Inside the NBA had that. It had rhythm. It had personality. It had the feeling of four people sitting at a desk who were not just reading notes, but actually enjoying, challenging, and roasting each other in real time. And Barkley was the engine of that entire machine. That is why this situation is so complicated. ESPN did not bring in Inside the NBA because it wanted a quiet, perfectly controlled halftime show. It wanted the energy. It wanted the chemistry. It wanted the unpredictable moments that made fans stop scrolling and pay attention. But that comes with a price. You cannot separate Barkley's value from Barkley's risk. The same mouth that creates controversy also creates viral clips. The same honesty that makes executives nervous also makes fans feel like they're watching something real. The same personality that can cross a line is the personality that made the show legendary in the first place. So if ESPN reacts too strongly, it risks destroying the very thing it paid for. And that is why Barkley has leverage. If they fire him, they may owe him a massive amount of money. If they silence him, fans may say ESPN ruined Chuck. If they ignore him, critics may say the network is afraid of its own star. No option is clean, and Barkley knows that. He knows ESPN needs the show to feel alive. He knows the audience does not want another safe corporate desk. He knows fans tune in because anything can happen when he is on screen. That is why his "fire me" comment was so powerful. It was funny, but it was also a warning. Barkley was telling the network, you may have the platform, but I am part of the reason people are watching it. And in modern sports media, that matters more than ever. Attention is the real currency. Not just contracts, not just broadcast rights. Atención. Clips, reactions, debates, trending topics. That is what Barkley creates. Even when people are mad at him, they are still talking about him. Even when fans disagree, they are still watching the clip. Even when the joke becomes controversial, ESPN still gets pulled into the center of the NBA conversation. That is why the network cannot treat him like a normal employee. A normal employee can be replaced. Charles Barkley cannot be replaced without changing the entire identity of the show. And that is the real reason ESPN likely will not touch him. Not because every executive loved the joke, not because there was no criticism, but because removing Barkley would create a bigger problem than keeping him. The truth is simple. ESPN finally has an NBA studio product that feels alive. And Barkley is one of the main reasons why. So unless something much bigger happens, the smartest move is to let the storm pass. Let fans argue. Let the internet burn itself out. Let Chuck be Chuck. Because the same man who causes the headache is also the man who keeps the room watching. The truth behind the headlines. Now we have to separate the headline from the truth because the headline made it sound like Charles Barkley was in real danger. Like ESPN had finally reached its limit. Like NBA legends were lining up to react to a firing that would shake the entire sports media world. But that is not what happened. Charles Barkley was not fired. He was not suspended. There was no public punishment. No official statement ended his run. No executive stepped in front of a microphone and announced consequences. The entire story exploded because Barkley said he hoped to be fired, not because ESPN actually fired him. And that difference is everything. This was not a normal scandal. It was a media storm built around three things: one joke, one radio interview, and one massive contract. Barkley understood that better than anyone. That is why he did not act scared. He did not hide. He did not disappear from the conversation. He became the conversation. He took the pressure from the original joke and turned it into a bigger story about money, power, freedom, and the strange business of modern sports television. That is why people kept watching. Not because they truly believed ESPN was about to throw away one of the most famous voices in basketball, but because they could see the game behind the game. They saw a legendary player turned broadcaster who no longer sounded afraid of consequences. They saw a network that needed his star power, but also had to manage the risk that comes with him. They saw a contract so large that firing him could become more expensive than keeping him. And they saw Barkley do what Barkley has always done: turn pressure into entertainment. That is the real genius of Charles Barkley. He can be the center of criticism and still make people laugh. He can create controversy and still make the audience feel like they are watching something honest. He can say something that makes executives uncomfortable, then turn around the next morning and make the entire internet talk about his contract instead. That is not an accident. That is experience. That is timing. That is understanding how sports media works in 2026. And that is why the story did not end with the joke. It evolved into a larger question. How much freedom should a star broadcaster have? How much risk should a network accept for authenticity? And when a personality becomes bigger than the desk he sits behind, who really has control? For Barkley, the answer seems clear. He knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly why people watch. And he knows ESPN cannot easily replace what he brings. That does not mean every joke lands. It does not mean every comment is hard. It does not mean criticism should be ignored. But it does explain why this moment did not become a career-ending disaster. Because Barkley is not just protected by a contract. He is protected by decades of trust with his audience. Fans may disagree with him. They may argue with him. They may even call him out. But they still believe he is real. And in a sports media world full of scripted debates and polished sound bites, being real is still one of the most powerful things a broadcaster can be. So the truth behind the headline is simple. Charles Barkley did not get fired. He reminded everyone why he probably will not be. The real lesson from Charles Barkley: in the end, this story was never just about one joke. It was about power. It was about money. It was about the thin line between honesty and responsibility. Charles Barkley has survived in sports media because he gives fans something rare. He sounds real. He does not speak like a corporate press release. He does not hide behind perfect language. And in a world where so many broadcasts feel controlled, that kind of honesty is valuable. But this moment also reminds us that being unfiltered comes with responsibility. A joke can go viral in seconds. A comment can become a headline before the game is even over. And when millions of people are watching, words carry weight. That is the lesson. Freedom matters. Humor matters. Authenticity matters. But respect matters too. Barkley's career shows why fans love fearless voices. At the same time, this controversy shows why even legends have to understand the stage they are standing on. ESPN may not fire him. Fans may keep defending him. The internet may move on. But the conversation is bigger than Chuck. It is about what sports television should be. Safe and polished, or honest and unpredictable? Maybe the answer is somewhere in the middle. A place where people can laugh, disagree, learn, and still respect each other. Because basketball is supposed to bring people together. The drama is entertaining. The debates are fun. The rivalries make the NBA special. But at the end of the day, the game is bigger than one joke, one network, or one contract. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, share it with another NBA fan, and subscribe for more NBA news, drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes stories. And before you go, comment your final answer. Press 1 if you think Charles Barkley is still the most entertaining voice in NBA media. Press 2 if you think ESPN should set stronger boundaries. Press 3 if you think both sides have a point. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next NBA story.